like that.
Isn't it just... Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here.
So...
Hello, sorry. That was a very non-committal Mick here.
Let's do it again. Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here.
There we go.
Hello.
There we go. Hello. So, what I thought we'd have a quick look today, even a quick look at today, is valve overdrive pedals.
Ooh.
And good uses for, common misconceptions, and yeah. So we have three today. We have the Kingsley Jester. This has been a favourite of mine for years and years. Simon Jarrett from Kingsley Amplifiers makes these, and they are phenomenal.
He's a killer guitar player.
He is awesome, dude. He is astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's coming over in July.
Is he?
Yes.
Ah, in which case we should do a
I think we should.
special show.
Yeah, but he's like GIT trained and does all the stuff. You know that stuff?
Git trained.
He's Git trained.
I spent 40 years getting Git trained, mate.
But no, he is sensational. He builds amazing amplifiers and he builds these wonderful valve overdrive pedals. So
Yeah, just to state the bleeding obvious, which I seem to like doing. These are valve overdrive pedals because they've got valves in them.
Correct.
Not because they're supposed to sound like valves.
no, correct. So basically, they're like a preamp. They're a valve amplifier preamp in a box.
Yep.
You know, generally speaking. Okay, so we've got the Jester. We've got the an original Butler Tube Driver. Very famously used by
Eric Johnson.
So he uses that into his Marshalls and he gets a really amazing sound out of it.
Mhm.
And I've got this. I've been asked about this loads of times. Everyone says, "Why do you have the Overlord? It's the worst sounding pedal in the history of distortion pedals." And yes, it was horrific. But then,
What do you really think of it though?
it was awful. But then Dan Coggins from Dinosaur, used to be Dinosaural,
Yep.
is a good friend and modded it for me, and now it sounds rather lush.
Took it all out, put an Angry Charlie in there.
You got it. But took out the main supply, so
Yeah.
it's now 12 volt DC, so it can run on the DC
Okay.
supply. Tweaked the EQ a bit, a couple little bits and pieces,
Yeah.
and now it sounds lush. So anyway,
Lush being a technical term, of course.
Yes.
In Australia. Actually, and in the West Country, to be fair.
it's also sort of making.
Yeah. You might hear girls say,
Oh, that lush, Gert lush.
yeah, when they look at Dan, for example, they might go, "Here, he's lush."
Okay.
Or they might not. They might be looking at the Butler Tube Driver, of
They'd
course.
be looking at my T-shirt,
Oh,
saying,
that's what
"Hey,
it is."
Dirt lush, that." Right, this is descending. Okay,
Yeah, let's move on.
right.
So what
So-
we're doing, we're saying, what do they sound like? What amps do they work well with? And let's compare them to a couple of overdrive pedals we know very well.
The reason I thought we'd have a look at this is that, unlike most overdrive pedals, this is really split into two camps. Guys who use them and absolutely swear by them, won't use anything else. Then there are guys who try them and
Swear at them.
swear at them
Yeah, yeah.
repeatedly, throw them at things.
That's nice.
So, and there's a reason for that. Okay. So again, we're using the Super Reverb and the Hamstead combination. Quite a special combination, I'm thinking. I'm
Sounding
liking
nice
it.
today.
Sounding really lovely. So the two amps together.
That was nice.
We'll keep the last lick.
That was nice.
Delete everything else, but we'll keep the last lick.
One thing we've been messing about with the Super Reverb is it has a bright switch, and the bright switch works really well when you've got cleaner sounds and mild overdrives like tube screamers, which roll a load of top end off.
Mm-hmm.
But when using really higher gain pedals which have a lot of top end in, bright switch
Yeah, I think
hurts a bit.
I would like to mod that bright switch and make it not so bright. Okay.
But the thing is, when you plug a tube screamer in, and that's the sound.
Okay, right.
Well, you get the fizz.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to do that another show. Anyway,
Right,
moving
cool.
on.
Okay, right.
We talked enough.
That's the two amplifiers. Now, we're using a very, very clean platform, right? And then in a minute, I'm going to turn the Hamstead into a not so clean platform.
Yeah.
And then we'll throw the overdrives and we'll see the difference.
Yeah, because it's important to say that a lot. Quite often we'll get comments that say, especially when we're talking about overdrives, I prefer my overdrives into a overdriving amp.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are like, no, I like the amps really clean for loads of headroom. So we'll try and cover both grounds in the context of this, yeah?
Generally, with the tube overdrive pedal, it is a preamp, okay? And the valves in the preamp, what happens when you grind a preamp valve?
It overdrives.
It overdrives, it compresses, right? And the way that valves compress is really lovely, which is why these sound really good. But if you have valve preamp into another valve preamp that is compressing, so valve compression into valve compression, it can get lost, which is why when we run these into the amplifiers clean, so for example, if we have a look at the Jester, which I'm leaving as this one, so, but you hear, right, you can hear the valve characteristics, you hear the noise characteristics as well, but it's, you know, it's an overdrive thing, that's what happens. You hear the valve characteristic, it's very expressive, it's very dynamic, right? When you have an amplifier, or amplifiers that have the headroom to deal with that. I love the, like the pick attack especially. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, that's the Jester. This is the Overlord, all right, the bottom one. How's Strang with that one? Crazy good, huh?
For the shittest sounding overdrive pedal ever, that sounds pretty non-shit,
Yes,
should we say?
yeah,
Sorry for
no,
the
it's
swearies
all right.
there.
Swearies!
We don't normally do swearies, but
no.
sometimes they just come out.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really lovely. And surprisingly how close it sounds to this. You done? Not exactly the same, but really close. And I love that sound.
It's really nice because this might sound surprising. I've never been interested in valve overdrive pedals.
Right.
I don't know why, but just haven't really. But blinking heck.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, I managed to avoid a sweary there.
So,
Most old English sweary. Lummy!
what a lot of guys, myself included, really like about them is their dynamic range, but also because they are basically a valve preamp, the way that they interact with other pedals is really interesting.
Is that EQ on the Tube Driver really set there?
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of off.
exactly.
Hey?
Yep, so watch this. Play this.
When you put the low in, it had that 4x12 cab kind
Right.
of chunk. If you were ever going to play your bottom strings, no low required at all. But actually, if you're a noodler up here, it makes that unbelievably fat.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry, where were they set?
So, yeah, pretty much there. Basically off. I think there's one little click on that. And anyway.
You just bought your overdrive pedal and you need to set things in the off position. It's like, that's broken, isn't it? Surely.
That would freak out your OCD though, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Something like
I can't even look at it.
that? Yeah. So,
I can't even look at it.
let's take the Tube Driver then. All right.
Yeah.
So it has an incredible amount of gain. The texture is extraordinary. It's really dynamic. It's beautiful. At the moment, we're running it into really clean amplifiers.
Yep.
Okay. What I'm going to do is going to turn off the super just for 2 seconds because there's no way that we can make that compress unless we crank it.
Kill ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, so-
Actually, just on that point, we're not very loud in here. The
No,
super's just under 2, which is, it's not painful on the ears. It's,
No.
Yeah. I would say less than gig volume for a lot of people.
So what I'm going to do now, go to the Hamstead. Can you play for us?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Hamstead at the moment. So, not quite wide open, but lovely. It's
Yeah. Compressing a little bit.
compressing a little bit. Now I'm going to make it compress quite a lot. So.
Sounds nice.
Isn't that lovely?
It really does sound nice.
Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to put the same settings on the Tube Driver. We're going to put that into the Hamstead.
Okay. Slightly less dynamic under the fingers.
Yes.
Lots of compression going on there.
Yes.
Pick attack goes a bit.
Yep, squishy. let's clean up the Hamstead again.
For my tastes, I prefer it into the cleaner.
Yep.
Yeah, but I can see guys who just like that really squishy
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. So, and the thing is, why I wanted to show you this, that's exactly how Eric Johnson uses it. He uses that into his Marshalls,
Right.
cranked. The Marshalls are compressing, and he loves that sound.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because if you think, you know, if you know Eric Johnson's rig, he's got half of it is very super sparkly clean fenders, and the other half is very heavily compressed. And
Marshalls.
The difference between the two is night and day. I remember doing a clinic at Anderton's with him once, and we were stood on stage, like literally as he was switching between the two, and it was like bright, crystal clear, and then really heavy saturation. And I guess a lot of that, when he's doing his, I don't suppose he does a lot of legato, but he does a lot of alternate picking, and it's almost like violining, because there's all the attack is lost.
Yes, exactly.
I took a long time to get there, but that's the point.
Yeah.
So
exactly. So that's
smooth.
Yeah, so smooth. So smooth. But into an amplifier that's not compressing, that's wide open, you get all the dynamics of the valves in the preamp section.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, very different experience. If we just turn on a standard overdrive pedal, all right. So I'm just going to switch on the blues driver here. So what we're going to do, we're just going to use the Hamstead for this test because I can make it compress really easily.
Yep.
Right. So if you can just play into a non-compressed Hamstead. So this is pretty wide open.
Sounds good.
Sounds good? Okay. This is the tube driver into the Hamstead. Okay. Now this is the blues driver into the Hamstead. Okay.
Yep.
Right. So, you feel the difference with the tube driver and just the way that valve compresses compared to a standard overdrive pedal. Right?
Yeah. The Boss seems like it's overdriving less and compressing less.
Yes. Well, so, okay. So I'll put a hair more gain on there. Just try that. Right, that's about as close as we can get the Boss pedal to the tube driver, right?
Yeah.
But very different experience. The mids, the warmth of the tube driver, the way it compresses when you're attacking, that all comes through in a clean amplifier, okay? Now if I turn up the amplifier so it's compressing, yep,
That's just the amp.
it's just, yeah.
Great
So,
sound.
tube driver into the compressed amp. Awesome. Now, blues driver into the compressed amp. Now, especially here the way, especially on the lower strings, where you really you hear the attack on the blues driver actually a lot clearer than you do with the tube driver,
Yeah.
right? and that just has to do with the way that the valve is compressing. Whereas into the clean amplifier, the transistors can sound not sterile, but sound like a pedal.
Yeah.
Whereas into a clean amplifier, the tube driver just sort of integrates itself as if it's another channel of the amp.
There's no doubt that, you know, right back to the beginning where we played the Jester, the Overlord and the Tube Driver, the first thing that came to mind to me was this sounds more like an amp.
Exactly.
It sounds more like the way an amp.
Yeah, yeah. But if you've got a really compressed amplifier and you've already compressing so heavily with the tube driver, or with a tube-based overdrive, you can hear why guys like, as they dig in harder, it just compresses a lot more because they're trying to get those bottom strings to chug or to be more pronounced. Whereas you stick a simple transistor overdrive, and it does become more pronounced. It works really well. So transistors with compressed valves work brilliantly.
Yes.
Yeah, but a compressed valve into a compressed valve sort of.
I was thinking that as well. You know, the sheer size of those tube pedals. I can see that creating issues for other pedals on your board. So if you've got choruses and flanges and boosts and stuff afterwards, you know, you're mixing pedals.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were just going for like the best overdrive sound you've ever heard, and really just a really good core overdrive was what you were after, and you had a very simple pedal board, not a lot on it, I can see why. I can really now see why people love valve overdrive pedals.
Yeah.
But I can also see that adding a load of stuff after that, asking that to play nicely with a pedal further down the line, particularly a boost or something. Is that the case?
It can be. So, especially these two have got quite a high output impedance.
Right.
So, if I... So if we go back to the tube driver, let's clean the amp up again.
Yep.
So if we stick the tube driver on, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the delay on after it, okay? But I'm going to leave the delay mix quite low and have a listen to what happens to the top end. So you hear it becomes a bit more sizzly. What happens is, because the output impedance is quite high in the tube driver, it hits the delay, which has a low output impedance. It drives the capacitance of the cables to the amp, right? At the moment, the tube driver is working with the cables to the amplifier.
So if you've got stuff that's very heavily buffered, that's going to be a problem?
Well, it means you're going to have to EQ it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the Overlord and the Jester, funnily enough, the Jester works really well with pedals downstream because he already does that in the pedal. Like it's a nice low output impedance, so it works with things really well.
Yeah.
But certainly these two.
So in essence, then, as with other pedals, it doesn't matter whether it's valve or transistor. It's how the output's sorted.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly. But just it's an interesting thing with those.
So
pedals.
as ever, some play nicely with others, and some
Exactly.
less so.
Okay, well, guys. I hope that was at least interesting and answered a few questions about valve overdrives and how they can be really awesome, given the right context.
The only question it hasn't asked for me is, what does it sound like with the Phase 90, the Memory Man, and the Tube Driver?
Shall we find out?
I think we ought to. Actually, what about the Overlord? I quite like. We've heard a lot of the Tube Driver.
Okay, here's the Overlord. I love that song. There we go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you next week.
See you then.
Cheers, guys. Bye.